cafeteria food is always known as being cold, packaged food, but farmers have a surplus product, so why do cafeterias not use farm fresh products?
Yeah, the Star Center Association began serving penny lunches in one school in 1894. Then a lunch committee was started, and lunches were extended to include a total of 9 schools in the city. In the spring of 1912, the school board in Philadelphia established a department of high school lunches. But other than local aid, the earliest federal aid came from the Reconstruction Finance Corporation in 1932 and 1933, where it granted loans to a few towns in southwestern Missouri to cover the cost in labor in preparing school lunches and serving them. But in the 1930s, with the Depression, there were surpluses of farm products that would be piled up, and millions of school children were unable to pay for their school lunches, and the danger of malnutrition among children increased. In 1935, the Federal Surplus Commodities Corporation, which had been established in 1933 as the Federal Surplus Relief Corporation to distribute surplus pork, dairy products, and wheat to school children who needed it. By 1941, the number of children eating federally supported school lunches was about 900,000 children. In a New York study of 50 malnutrition children aged 2 to 9, it was found after improving their nutritional level over a 1 to 3.5 year period that their IQs rose by an average of 18 points. No such change occurred in a well-nourished control group. By 1941, federally supported school meals programs were operating in all 50 states, plus the District of Columbia and Puerto Rico. But it wasn't until 1946 that school lunches became more widespread. The Child Nutrition Act of 1966 added more opportunities for low-income children to have breakfast and lunch at school, but still, only about 15% of students got free or reduced lunches. Then came the downfall of school lunches. The Omnibus Reconciliation Act of 1980, signed into law by President Jimmy Carter, reduced the federally supported school lunches and child nutrition programs budget by approximately 8%. The Reagan administration cut the federal school lunch spending by $1.5 billion in order to lower federal spending on child nutrition. They shrank meal sizes and reduced the number of children who had free or reduced lunch. This outraged many principals in schools and leaders of counties. The minimum standards of USDA at one point in 1980 listed ketchup as a relish as acceptable vegetables. A similar controversy arose in 2011 when Congress passed a bill prohibiting the USDA to allow pizza with 2 tablespoons or 30 milliliters of tomato paste to qualify as a vegetable. With the decrease of funding for school lunches that began with the Carter and Reagan administration in the 1980s, school lunches became more capitalistic, with corporations providing more of the food at lower quality. At the same time, child obesity hit a massive spike, bringing the school lunches back on the political stage. That brings us to 2023, where people are again rethinking school lunches. In order to learn more about what schools today are doing about lunch foods, I got to talk with the Executive Director of Food and Nutrition Services at Fairfax County Public Schools, the 11th largest school district in the United States.
Yeah, so we've implemented 12 new recipes since the beginning of the school year. What we'll be doing is that we're going to see which recipes were successful, and we're going to build out a whole cycle menu, so that way we can have a rotating selection of different recipes. After we build out the cycle menu, we'll start working on trying to incorporate the new food from the food show into our menus too. It might be later on in the spring or maybe next fall that our students will be able to see those new menu items, but we'll be working on developing all of those concepts onto our school meals too.
Sean also thinks they should get a variety of food, like they get when they're eating out or eating at home.
Different variety and a whole bunch of different local flavors. And I think that's what our kids are excited about, our students are excited about, is because, I'm sure yourself, you're eating a lot more than just mac and cheese and chicken tenders. You're probably eating a whole bunch of different variety at home and when you go out to eat too. So we just want to make sure we're reflective of that with our meals too.
The big business of school lunches has always been around. Companies like Tyson, PepsiCo, and Kellogg's lobby politicians to keep their foods in schools. Those cold packaged foods have to be made by someone, and they need to be big companies. Tyson has its own cafeteria list for tasty foods like burgers. Yet, one of the most mysterious things is that Tyson does not publish its own list on schools. Now, here's the interesting part. When you look at vending machines in schools or even the lunch line, name brands pop up. But if you look at these two Doritos side by side, they have the same parent company, Frito-Lay. They have the same name on them. In fact, they practically look the exact same. Yet one is sold in schools and one is sold at your everyday grocery store. And when you look at the ingredients, you see how they're different. One is just there so that they can get into schools. But how are the ingredients different, but the products the same? In 2014, the USDA made something called Smart Snack Guidelines, bringing back those elementary school pizza parties. In fact, how come you got Domino's and it looked the same except for, it had small slices? Well, sorry to break it to you, but looking at this image on Domino's website, you can see this massive carry-out giant makes it a school-approved pizza with things like half the fat of the original pizza cheese, meaning these big companies change their pizza's taste and form entirely just to make money on the students' lunches. But schools have incentives to use Domino's, as the more pizza the school buys, the more reward points they get, which can be used to buy cafeteria food prep materials like ovens.
For the Saxon broadcast, this has been Cameron Kuhn and Braden Verity.